I think what was appealing is that it's something the audiences won't have seen me do before. She's a former first daughter, so she's been brought up very much in kind of the American privilege world and a very political world, and that's so far removed from who I am, and it was so different to anything I've done before. But also, you have the structure of a legal procedural, but at the centre of it is someone who I think is a really interesting character and is very thrilling. She's morally ambiguous at times, she makes mistakes, she's got her finger on the self-destruct button, and yet you're still rooting for her. She's very relatable, she's very humane. It's not something that you can base it on anyone, because Hayes has written she's such a kind of a Tasmanian devil, and you know, we have these the knowledge of the former first daughters that we have is very limited, as it should be, to their public persona. Hayes, however, because she has been, you know, she's made all the choices in life that most teenagers and college students do, but yet she's had public scrutiny and media attention because of it. And I think the way that she decides to deal with that and cope with it is to be the first one to admit it. And she says, I'm not perfect. She knows that she's made mistakes. She knows that the paparazzi are going to be following her and linking her to certain scandals. And she embraces that, and it's very brave of her, but it's also a protective mechanism. It's a way of going, I can carry on doing exactly what I want to do because I'm the first person to admit it. And it makes her quite free and quite untouchable in that respect. But I think there's also a cost for her. I think one of the reasons why she continues to self-medicate, and one of the reasons that she makes kind of choices that are kind of harming to her, is because she still doesn't have those healthy coping mechanisms yet, because she's dealing with a very difficult circumstance. And she also knows that she's been brought up in privilege, which she doesn't think is fair. And she knows that because of her last name, she'll be able to get away with certain things. But she uses that privilege to help other people and lets them piggyback on her own privilege. And that's what the cases start to investigate. We start to investigate things like very topical issues like the Black Lives Movement, police corruption, slut shaming, which the media are talking about a lot at the moment. And these are very kind of relevant issues to now. And it's great to be part of something that could be, you know, a standard legal procedural, but yet is asking us to engage in a conversation that's very current. The pilot begins with her being given an ultimatum. She's in prison for drugs possession, and her mother and Connor Wallace, who is her kind of nemesis, he's the district attorney, and he's also become the family lawyer. He's very involved in the family politics. They say, you know, we will either bury you with this, we will make this as worse for you as it can possibly get, or you agree to come and work for the Conviction Integrity Unit. So already we have a very difficult situation that she's kind of forced into, and she takes it reluctantly, the lesser of two evils. And of course that has huge effects on her personal relationship with Connor Wallace and with her mother as well. And it's that thing of, who can she really trust? And she questions this in the season with her mother, specifically by saying, are you ever just my mother, or is there always an agenda? And I think that's very hard for someone to have to live with, you know, that your mother is part of your professional world as well as your personal world. And she's an ambitious mother, and Hayes is of the same, cut from the same cloth, and yet is also a child that is having to navigate her way through a very tricky relationship. Connor, we discover that there is a history between them, and they are, in effect, they're equal in their kind of abilities as lawyers and their skill set. And because they've had a emotional connection and a romantic past, it higher the stakes for them, because it means that when they're working together, there is always this subplot and this tension. And I think it also kind of is an extra obstacle for them both to kind of get the work done. And it means there's a power play going on, because he got her out of prison and he made her do this Conviction Integrity Unit. And she, within the confines of that kind of prison, in a way, she has to find a way of getting back at him. And she does so very skillfully and being brilliant at what she does, but doing it all on her own terms. So there's kind of there's a power struggle between them that's really fun to play. I've always loved and looked for variety. I'm trained in a work ethic where you have a process by which you treat each character as if you are to inhabit them, as opposed to them being part of who you are. You don't reduce a character to just who you are as a person, and I quite like to get kind of lost in my characters. And Peggy was so different from Hayes Morrison, and that was part of the appeal. Not that I don't love Peggy, but that this is now asking me for new challenges and a new opportunity to tell a story from a very different perspective, from a very different world, and that appeals to my kind of curious nature. I have a very close friend who is a prosecutor in Kansas City, and I went to see her at court, and one thing that I was really kind of taken with is the kind of performance element that lawyers have when they are stating their case to a jury, and how rigorous they are in their preparation and their knowledge of what they do and of the system, and yet there is this kind of performance element to it as well. And I thought that was really interesting. That Hayes has that too, that's the world Hayes will come from. She's a great communicator, and she's someone who is kind of Machiavellian at times and dynamic. And I saw my friend as having those qualities as well, and needing those qualities to be able to engage with a jury, with a group of strangers, and convince them that her argument is true and is more valid. And it was kind of fascinating to see that. And I think also, to keep up to date with current events and to be having conversations about these topical things like corruption within the legal system, like Black Lives Matter movement, like slut shaming, like mental diminished capacity and how that affects cases. To be kind of aware of that is I see as kind of as for my personal responsibility, but also in relation to my responsibility in playing Hayes at the Conviction Integrity Unit, because if we're going to be looking at these cases, it makes it so much more important to me if I'm aware that these are things that affect people's lives. This isn't just entertainment and I'll learn my lines and have fun on a show and wear some great shoes. Like we're dealing with cases that people who are watching it will relate to and will have been affected by at some point, whether it's directly affected by them or it's affected their community or it's affecting them globally. And I think that's a responsibility as an actor that's kind of essential in playing it.